That is what I call a closed-loop CRM. And closed-loop means exactly what it says. You start at the top, and you'll see we'll come around and end at the top. So there's 5 components in this second ingredient called closed-loop CRM. And the first component is that of a structured, appropriate customer engagement channels. So we could do it the easy way and say, well, Bart, you already talked about that. Those are these 4 channels up here, and you wouldn't be wrong. Or you could be a little more sophisticated in your thinking and say, well, there's all kinds of digital channels that I could use. Some of them are more mature than others. I probably should have a presence at least in the mature ones today and increasingly in the less mature ones, but important ones. So for example, on the maturity side, traditional direct mail, display, all of this would be a way of reaching your customers in your sales and marketing and service efforts. Mature, and you do it today, and it's a channel. You can then go to email and websites and social and search and video, and that's kind of just beginning to hit a certain peak as another way to reach your customers in your sales and marketing efforts. You could start to get a little bit more adventurous in television, premium content publishers. Those are the HBOs or the Netflix or people that package information and get it out to you. Again, not totally the norm of how people do business on the B2B, B2C, or B2B2C front, but increasingly important. And you can then start to move into the Internet of Things or out-of-home technologies or channels. Obviously, you know Internet of Things, devices that are connected to the Internet, whether it's in the, whether it's stockroom, how much stock am I using, whether it's on the machine itself, how quickly is it consuming the products, and so forth. Out of pocket, for those of you that are not familiar, or out of home for the technology, that's your beacons that are inside stores. Macy uses them to figure out who's there and to make special offers to while you're in the store. That's increasingly digital billboards that know the market that is at that particular location and changes the billboard digitally to address the need of the customer. And again, I'm not saying you're all doing that, but it's just a couple of ways of looking at this all-important need to work within appropriate customer engagement channels. Now, we are who we are, and when you create this recipe, you have to start with what you have. So there's nothing wrong with having some of those or some of these, but we have a position and we have to just know what it is. And we should ask ourselves, because we listen to our customers, what channels do they happen to use frequently? And the only way to know that is to ask the customer. So we spend an enormous amount of time in market research and digital surveys and on not digital surveys to find out where is the customer hanging. Where do they like to buy? Where do they like to market, receive information from a marketing? Where do they like to receive and ask for service? And if indeed we understand our customers well, what Jerry called a customer obsession this morning, then in fact we will be in a position, even though we may be in only one of these or something today, to plot out the chart for the future. Does that make sense? Okay. So now we have these channels, and it doesn't make a difference what you have today because you're going to move towards what you need tomorrow, but each channel is an opportunity for you to listen, for you to gather structured, relevant data in a structured approach. And I can't emphasize how important that is. We spend an awful lot of time, money, and effort putting product out on the market. We don't spend enough time, money, and effort listening to how the customers are receiving our offering. So I'd like to tell you there's a simple way to, or a simple structured approach to gather relevant data. I have to tell you that's not totally the case just yet. What I do know is that you need to gather both non-digital offline data and digital online data, and you need to put that together and begin to understand what your customer is looking for. I do know that you need to analyze it for insight, and particularly something that you can action. So I'll give you an example. Ritz-Carlton is owned by Marriott Corporation. Marriott Corporation is one of our customers. It's a wonderful company. Ritz-Carlton had a very unique situation in Las Vegas, Nevada, a couple of years ago. It was a young, newlywed couple that had just got married. They went out to Ritz-Carlton in Las Vegas, and they checked in, and they were very, very excited. They had just been married. This was the first time they were in Las Vegas. And they were tweeting all the way from the moment they left their home in Arkansas to the moment they ended up in Las Vegas. And they entered the hotel, and they greeted them at the desk, and they put them in a very lovely room at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. Now, for many of you that know Ritz-Carlton, usually most Ritz-Carltons are a little bit antiquated. They look like you your grandfather's room. They're beautiful wood paneling and fireplaces. The furniture is lovely, but it's not exactly hip and modern. So these newlyweds got in, the bride tweets, she said, you know, this is wonderful. We saw slot machines at the airport and the hotel. And I mean, it's a nice hotel, but not exactly what I was looking for. But hey, I got my wonderful new hubby. Life is okay. 4 minutes later, Marriott Corporation has an enormous listening tool, picked up that tweet. 2 minutes later, the manager of the front desk of the Ritz-Carlton in Las Vegas was informed, you have a problem in suite 505. And they kind of huddled at the front desk and said, what are we going to do about this? And they made a decision and went upstairs and knocked on suite 505 and said, you know, we've been sitting downstairs thinking about you guys, newlyweds. You know, we're thinking maybe a room that overlooks the strip, that has a jacuzzi, kind of modern. That would be a more appropriate room for you. Would you allow us to move you? The young lady said, of course. I mean, that'd be great. Thank you very much. And they move her and him, and they get to the new suite, beautiful new overlooking the strip, just what she was looking for, and she writes another tweet. She said, you're not going to believe what just happened. It's like they were reading my mind. He came upstairs and moved this room. It's overlooking the strip. It's just what I was looking for. Ritz-Carlton rocks. The right channel, listening, actionable insight. That make sense? Okay, now there's lots of opportunity. We'll tell more stories about this, but I want to get to the third component. So we have these channels, regardless of what they are today, where they will be tomorrow, all giving us potential information about our customer. So what do we do with this data? We have to house it somewhere. And if you remember, again, what Jerry McGovern said this morning, more data or more crap is exactly what he used, is not necessarily better. Relevant data is better. And that brings us up to the holistic customer profile. And I really want to slow down here because it's a core concept, as I've alluded to. You know, I wrote my first article in 1986 on the importance of the customer profile. And what I said was, think of it as a flower, as a daisy. Put the customer or the distributor or whatever may be the appropriate customer in your books in the center of the daisy and create a flower with petals of information. A profile takes 12 to 18 months to build. The petals don't last for life. Information gets old. Like a good horticulturalist, you pull out the dead petals and allow new petals of information to grow. But your job is to create something whereby, as I've said down here, your CRM job starts with a full picture of every customer, their entire story, wants and needs. Because as a businessman or a businesswoman, how in the world can you possibly bring the right product to the right customer, in the right channel, their way, not your way, during their buyer window, if you don't have a clear focus of your customer? And what the customer profile does, it takes you from a blurry picture to something in focus. And I'm astounded at how few companies, still today, 23 years after I wrote that article, 33 years after I wrote, whatever, how few do a good customer profile. So let me talk a little bit deeper. That's what it looks like. That's the flower. That's the customer in the center and the petals of information around the top of it. This is Beneteau. Beneteau makes sailboats and they make motorboats. They go through dealers, so they have a dealer profile to know about the dealers. The dealer then has a customer, so they have a customer profile, call it an end customer, who buys the boats. So they need to have a profile for both. This is not correct. It's a schema. But as you can see, we have lots of different information. How does the dealer or the customer like to be contacted? Any alerts as to opportunities that are in the pipeline, activities, next steps. What have they purchased? What are they worth to us? Any new sales opportunities or quotes that are outstanding? What service have we done? Who do they use for dealer? And voila. We now have that new petal called digital insight. Remember we talked about integration of online and offline data? Now it's integrated into the holistic customer profile. Am I tracking with everybody right now? This is very important because companies have taken the profile even further. This is Blue Shield of California, one of our customers, 3.5 million members. They've got 3 profiles. Why? Well, there's you, the member, or me, and we have certain needs when we buy our health insurance. But you often belong to a company, so they have a lot of information about the employer group that you belong to, so they can sell effectively. And typically, you and or the employer group is sold to by what they call a producer or a health insurance broker. And that's now a question of the ability for us to use these profiles to better understand our customers. And I really want to stop and talk for a minute about that profile just because it's so important. So here was the example I used earlier on of Jaguar. They know my purchase data, my service, my dealer data, the leases. But what they don't know is the website behavior or social media. And their goal is to have access to relevant data tied to Barton. Relevant data about Jaguar lovers is meaningless if I'm going to buy the car and they don't know it's me that's buying the car. And in this modern digital world, unless you are integrating online and offline data to thrive in the digital deluge, how can you have that customer in focus? How can you sell effectively? How can you market effectively? How can you service effectively? Is this making sense? David, would you please call the audio guy and have him clean up the mic? It's not working properly. Thank you. Okay. So let's go to the fourth ingredient in our closed-loop CRM. We've got the channels. They're spitting off data. The data is allowing us to go into the customer profile, and now we need to somehow make sense of this data. And comes in the whole idea of actionable data analytics. And folks, there's no shortage of data, as Jerry McGovern alluded to this morning, but there is a shortage of understanding how to use that data well. So lots of companies use excuses like, well, we just can't get an omni-channel or a total view of the customer. Or they say, you know, and this is a study done by Forrester last year, or beginning part of this year, 46, almost half of them say we lack the ability to integrate digital and offline data, what I'm alluding to. Or 44% say there's too much data. Or 38% says I don't have the technology to manage the data. You know, those are excuses, folks. I don't buy it. I know that there's enough data that is available and data analytics tools to really allow us to take that data and make sense of it. Whether it is effective segmentation with Zumba Fitness, these are all customers, with Zumba Fitness used to better understand when you are a Zumba dancer, how often you go to class, what type of class do you take, do you buy clothes or not buy clothes, do you go to the annual events, the exhibitions and dances? Who are you? Are you a retired teacher? Are you a mom? Are you a guy that is working during the day? You know, who are you? And they begin to really segment effectively using good data analytics tools. Lookalike modeling is something that Giorgio Armani and Coca-Cola do all the time. So I have, this is what my best customers look like. Let me take that data overlay and look at other customers that have 60% of the same attributes and see if, in fact, I can bring them up to the bigger picture. So Armani, I worked very carefully on this one. Armani, 51% of men buy Giorgio Armani clothes, 49% of women in this country. The big spenders have a very, very concrete footprint as to lifestyle and why they buy Giorgio Armani. And for a long time, Giorgio Armani did not look at customers using data analytics. They looked at them more than anything from the top 20% of money givers, the next 20%, so they brought them into 5 segments based on the dollar value of the customer, which is obviously absolute rubbish. And what was important was to understand who makes up the top 20. And what we did is we looked inside the top 20 and got a very good understanding of their profile and who they were, and then began to overlay that in the next layer down, the 20% below that, and notice that, in fact, there's lots of people that had similar characteristics but were never marketed to or sold to in the way we sold to the top 20%. So these are called lookalike models. All this stuff exists. Sizing of opportunities at Kraft Foods, we do that all the time. Acquisition modeling, all of these are all, I'm not going to go through them. There's many, many tools to do effective data analytics. And only the company that's not willing to make a push would allow that to get in the way. So now we've done our data analytics. We know which customers, which products, which services. Then I come to the question I asked Jerry McGovern this morning. So now we have data, and we have insight into the customer, and we have thought about which products and services are appropriate. But are we contextually relevant to how we get that data or information or product or service to our customer? And I've been spending a lot of mind thought on this context of contextual relevance. Because what we know is a couple of things. That figure's a little bit old now. It's actually 80% would agree or strongly agree that I appreciate vendors who contact me with relevant and contextual information early on in my buying experience, or for that matter, search experience. Because what they want to do is they expect you to find them, know them, and delight them. Every customer has a buying journey. We know that 80% of them are digital. If you're not at the right place at the right time during their digital journey, and your customer is at the right place at the right time of their customer journey, who do you think is going to get the order? Who gets the attention? And yet what we also know is, boy, is this hard. Because whether it's customer obsession or customer delight, what we know is that plus contextual marketing relies on knowing the customer at every touch point in their journey. But then intellectually ask yourself, how do you do that? And what I have thought about, and this is the challenge I put to McGovern this morning, is serving up contextual information to the right person at the right time. And this is also important, their way, the way they want to be sold to. Not your way, their way, right? Remember this? No, find me, know me, delight me. My way. During their buyer window. So even if we serve up the right information their way, if in their buying window we're not there when they want to learn about a home mortgage or they want to learn about a whatever, business product, then we've lost them as well. And I'd be very interested, not the purpose of today, but I'd be very interested to learn from you at the booth or during the discussion, how do you lock down contextual relevance? How do you know your customer at every touch point? How do you make sure you're serving the right information to the right person their way during their buyer window? Am I making sense to everybody? This is the challenge. This is what we're shooting for. Because when we do that, and we can then thrive in the digital deluge. You with me? Okay, which brings us all the way back, as I said, closed-loop CRM to the top. And here now what we're talking about is an ability to now take the contextual relevance. We know what we should be saying to whom, and guess what? We put it in the channels that are relevant to the customer. And we listen to what the customer says, and we put it in the profile, and we do our data analytics, and we get the right thing to say their way, not our way, in the buyer window, and we send it down through the right channel. That's the second ingredient in the recipe to be successful in thriving in the digital deluge.